So first we're going to look at the front view. So what I'm looking for here is the angle of your leg or your femur and how much it's rotated or not. You have a very minimal rotation in, which might be a sign of some outer hip weakness. A few other things pointed to that possibly as well, but we'll go through those as we go. I'm also looking for where your toe is. If you're forward or if you really toe out, you're in a very neutral forward position, so that looks great. Also looking just for general symmetry between legs and between strides, and you look very symmetrical. I didn't see any issues other than one thing we'll talk about on the back view that would be different symmetry wise. So this looks good. We'll transition up here to the side view, and let's talk about that. So like I mentioned, arm swing looks very symmetrical, trunk looks good. We'll look at the trunk lean in some pictures. I think the treadmill really inhibits us from running normal when it comes to having a forward lean, because we feel like we need to run close to the treadmill but yet not be leaning into it. So I think that modifies how we run, and that's the case for everyone. So here your running stride looks really good. I'm looking to see how far does this leg come up with each stride, and some of that's going to be based on your speed. A sprinter is going to be kicking up towards their bottom a lot more and have more knee bend, versus if you're doing a long slow run, you tend to have less. Just a difference in the running form based on purpose. I'm looking to see how far your knees bend when you come forward, kind of how much hip flexion that you get, and then also how much hip extension as far as your leg moving backwards for your push-off. So also we'll look at ankle position here and how much it bends. That looks really, really good. You had, I think, about 10 degrees, 20 degrees of ankle dorsiflexion of how far your ankle bends. And that's completely the norm, which 15 to 20 is the normal. So looking at the back, biggest thing I want you to watch for is when you run, at least this day, you might not do it every day, you gradually would start to come over to the left, and then you recognize it and start to push yourself back. So you're kind of starting to make that glide over. It's not super obvious, but if you watch it for a minute or so, you'll see yourself kind of shift, and then all of a sudden you take yourself back. What I think is happening here is it's very likely that your right leg is actually stronger than your left, which can be pretty common. But what's happening is when you push off with your right, it's gradually pushing you towards the left because it's so much stronger, and you're not getting the same equal push off on your left. So I have a couple tests that you can do and basically assess is that actually the case or not, and then if so, there's some exercises that are super easy you could add in, and that would eliminate that for you. And then also I'm looking here to see your hips on if it's a teeter-totter motion or if it's, let's see, bring it back a second. Basically if it's moving back and forth or if they stay fairly level. You have a slight angle, slight hip drop as you take each stride, but it's not anything too significant. Some people are extremely significant. So even though I noticed it a little bit, it's not bad at all. So we'll go there. Let's go ahead and pause this. We're going to change screens. Let's see. Okay, let's get you into this mode. So let's break down picture by picture. So here from the front view, like I talked about, looking at knee position, you can see a little bit of a rotation at your leg, likely just due to some outer hip weakness. Super common. I'd say 90% of runners have it. Probably the number one thing that I've ever had to fix or kind of work on with runners. And then here where your foot is in relation to midline of your leg, that looks really good. Moving to the next picture, we're looking at your foot position here. You have a slight toe out. Being neutral is ideal, but at the same time, it's within normal limits. It's not a massive amount, and really nothing to worry about there. Then from a side view, we're looking at this knee bend and how much does your leg bend. And let's see, let's look at some numbers for you. So your knee flexion or your knee bend was 35 degrees, and the average is, or kind of the normal healthy range is 35 to 45. So you were right at the edge of that healthy range at 35. So you're good there. And that looks really good. Let's see. Okay, I have a few things I measured on this slide. One is the trunk lean, which I mentioned a little bit about the treadmill kind of being in the way, that naturally we're not going to feel like we want to lean into it versus if we're outside running. So you are fairly upright here. I think you were at 7 degrees, and 7 to 10 is normal. But it seems fairly upright, at least in the image. But I think the treadmill is more the culprit there. Then looking at your hip extension, so we're measuring from the greater trochanter, which is the top portion of your femur bone, and then measuring down to the very end here by your knee. What we want is about 20 degrees hip extension is probably perfect and probably the most someone would have. You had 10, which is pretty good. But if you focus when you're running on really thinking about pushing the ground away from you as you're striding, so almost like you want to hit and almost like you'd be saying, get away from me type of thing, like just really push it off very forcefully, you'll notice a big increase in your speed just by thinking about that mentally. So if you work on any of these techniques that I mentioned with your running, only pick one and work on it at a time. Don't try to think about too many pieces at once, because if you do, one, you'll get frustrated, and then two, it's way too much to mentally focus on. So just pick one little tidbit and focus on that as you go. Let's see. This next one, main thing I measured here was your ankle dorsiflexion, which is the amount of ankle bends there. You were at 20 degrees. The normal is 15 to 20 degrees, so that looked great. Arm swing, like we mentioned before, was very symmetrical. This lower leg's not fully parallel to the ground, but once again, that's going to depend on how fast you're running. If you're, sprinting and running for a minute or two, that's going to be much higher and more of a knee bend, versus if you're running, 5 miles or more, it's going to be much lower, and that's just natural. So ankle-wise, though, I really want to tell you that looks great. A lot of people have a lot of stiffness at the ankles, and that can be a very difficult point for them, and yours looks great. Then on back view, so we're looking at the pelvis, basically measuring where the greater trochanters are. I didn't have you mark any specific bony alignment, but visually I can kind of tell where it would be based on kind of the motion and where your leg is in space. So marking that, you had about an 8-degree pelvic tilt or kind of hip drop, you can term it either way, which is not bad at all, pretty minimal, but I do think you could do some outer hip exercises, and that would make you even more strong than what you already are. But a lot of people, like I mentioned before, theirs is like a major teeter-totter. Yours, even visually, I didn't see a whole lot of that. So this is looking at basically where the middle of your foot is in relation to the middle of your lower leg. And what we're looking for is what's called eversion, which your heel is going to be kind of out and away from the rest of your body. Yours was 8 degrees, and the normal is 6 to 8 degrees, so that looks perfect. That means you're not overpronating and you're not having any other foot issues as far as where you are in space as you're accepting the weight. So just to give an overview of things that look great, the amount that your knees bend and are both accepting weight during the swing phase looks great. The amount of your ankle motion looks great throughout the entire running motion. And then you heel strike, which that's totally normal. I'm not concerned about that. So things that you can do to be your best runner possible is So I mentioned that leg strength difference. What I want you to do is basically sit on the edge of a chair and practice getting up and down off of a chair using only one leg. So do it first with the right leg, stand up with one leg, and then sit back down with only weight on one foot, and then switch and do the other leg. See if there's a difference between those. My guess from seeing just that little bit of a transition to the left on the treadmill is that your right leg is stronger. If so, things you can do are like single leg squats, just that getting up and down off a chair with one leg. That's an exercise. I used to give that to soldiers all the time to work on. You'd be amazed how many were unable to do it, and it was shocking to them. And then step ups. Anything that's going to isolate strength more on one leg is going to help you eliminate any difference if you do have one there. And then when you work on speed work, there's two things you can do. You can think of pushing the ground away from you forcefully, which we talked about. Or the second thing you could focus on is think about bringing your knees high. And it's going to feel over-exaggerated, but it's actually going to get you where you want to go as far as increasing your speed. And you'll notice a little bit of a difference in your running form. Strengthening outer hip muscles are just going to help you with overall muscle endurance. And then the front of your shin muscles is what's going to control that eccentric, or that slowly lowering your foot down into pronation to slow that process down. That's probably the only thing out of everything I saw that could possibly lead to more of an injury. So what I want you to do is give you a few exercises for that, and that should help. Because once you increase your mileage to be the much higher amounts, you can be at risk of those little tiny things starting to add up. So I will give you a link of a few exercises you can do, and that should help make you absolutely perfect. But honestly, don't beat yourself up. I know you watched the videos a ton of times, but it looked great. So these things are minimal, and if I tested myself, I'd probably have the same exact things, to be totally honest. So it's just something that if you get down to the nitpicky, things that you can notice, but it'll save you any possible injury issues down the road to work on. So I think it's great to know these things and to be able to prevent anything from creeping up so you can keep running and doing what you want. So happy training and happy running. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to me. I would love to help you. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.